This is an experiment in evolutionary biology, similar to what some artists and writers have done with the evolution of birds, except it's about social evolution. The purpose of any kind of utopia is to make statements about the real society we're living in now. So see if you can spot any hidden messages about today's world I'm trying to say. What if the world, or a large part of it, was the way many of us would like it to be, where big women are considered the ideal and no longer have to worry about issues like health, malpractice, and discrimination? In my video A Fat Manifesto, I explained that the BBW movement, also called the acceptance movement or body positivity, has been around more than 30 years, long enough for someone to grow up not knowing those things ever existed. Nowadays, if a woman is treated with rudeness, a guy can go up to another guy and say, "What's wrong with you? Don't you know what a woman is?" Because that's the prerogative of a social majority or something that is popular. And yet, if you go to a marathon or other sporting event, you'll probably meet someone who acts the way people did before size acceptance existed. And those two worlds coexist with each other. This model, who many people would consider the most beautiful woman on the planet, was hired by a regular catalog to model clothes, something that makes me glad we've turned the page. But she might be dieting right now because she was pressured by another company, or maybe for her own reasons. Even though they have their own minds and gratitude for their success, there just is no loyalty. And this isn't meant to be a criticism. If someone who has spent their entire life proud and confident suddenly makes a radical change in their appearance because of a bad influence, you can ask, do they know it exists? Have they ever seen it? Among her friends and the people she knows, does she know who's really on board and who isn't? Among her boyfriends and family, does she know who cares and who is intolerant? If a successful, intelligent woman gets bariatric surgery, the response is, how does her husband stand for this? Where were her friends when she was thinking about self-harm? And that's because certain corners of society give human life absolutely no quarter, seeking to single them out and destroy them, while the goal of people who care is respect others for who they are and promote life and health wherever it exists, including self-respect and self-defense. The example I gave in the past is we need to discover a tribe of humans where large women are the standard of beauty, fertility, and wealth, so we can see that it doesn't prevent them from thriving and reproducing for thousands of years, and diplomacy would force us to abide by their customs. Except that tribe is the one we're living in now. This is our culture, our preference, and the rest of society needs to get its act together to avoid malpractice and mistreatment. So here's a more complex scenario. Let's say there's a homogeneous human society where everybody's the same race, that just like our American society began with the Declaration of Independence, they started with the declaration, "Fat is beautiful." And let's say for simplicity that time stands still except for social developments. There is no war, perpetual health for everyone has been achieved genetically, and all men are handsome, successful admirers. Bigotry has been outlawed. So if a woman finds out she has gallstones, the insurance company doesn't tell her she doesn't qualify for surgery because of the liability. The doctor's office has a sign out front that says, "Come as you are." How this came about was a big woman was elected president and decided, "I'm not going to take this anymore." And then, if I get preferential treatment, everyone should have it. In the early years, when the Declaration is still fresh in people's minds, people are anxious to live without discrimination, enjoying a blissful life where they're free to be themselves, enjoying the kingdom's beautiful beaches, education centers, and businesses, retaining a fourth area for the last vestiges of thin society where diet and fitness enthusiasts can go. This is because they didn't want a reverse of the bigotry that was there before. Now, you might ask, why make a refuge for bigotry? If cardiologists and neurologists who get verbally angry with patients are disbarred, what's the downside? It turns out those professionals still knew things that were necessary to society, but they fought so vehemently it was impossible to separate this knowledge from their bigotry. So the remnants of old society were allowed to live in this refuge. People with work exemptions, people who like being athletic, and within its walls one might think things never changed. So here are the results of this experiment. The men of the kingdom are considered gentlemen because, although they are very passionate, ultimately they're not interested in sex. Or to be more specific, they see it the way a rock climber sees a mountain. Weakness is considered a good thing, like the phrase, using the weak to lead the strong. It encourages mental acuity. Women of the kingdom are not lazy. The number one profession among women is student. Whining and pouting are a good thing. So if a couple desires intimacy, the more of a challenge it is, the more romantic it becomes. They've become a tribe of philosophers. So after a few years, this culture starts to divide into smaller cultures based on body type. In the business district, where women spend a lot of time sitting down, the ideal woman has big hips. In the resort district, they're fat in the chest, and in the education and restaurant district, they're big in the waist. Now, the tribe where women want to carry weight in what used to be called the right places lives in the ambiguous middle ground that's on the edges of thin land. This is the closest one to the society we're living in now, which is to say they're set apart from fat acceptance, especially if a woman is proportionate. It's considered socially acceptable. Members of this tribe don't consider themselves unfit. The men don't consider themselves fat admirers. So really, the men and women who come to the resort district actually live on the outskirts of thinland. In this society, the pressure on women to be a certain way by nature has become an unfair class system. So many of the women move to the fatlands where they're treated more fairly. In wasteland, every man is a feeder, every woman is a feedee, because even thin women are capable of being feedees. There are many smaller women in wasteland who work as nurses and other jobs only they can do. They're what you might call vocal feedees, who make up for their petiteness with enthusiasm. They're always talking about eating, popcorn, vegetables, Jell-O. Besides students, the number one profession is the food industry, followed by photography and other kinds of artists. The women of Pear Bottom tend to be strong. There are even some personal trainers there who like strong women with big hips. Unlike Wasteland, which has a lot of cashiers and waitresses, Pear Bottom has a lot of office workers who spend most of their time sitting. Of the three tribes, this one has the most equality among the sexes. There are no horses in Pear Bottom, however. Over time, several interesting things happen. In Wasteland, where women ride mobility scooters, the smaller women who eat without gaining any weight have been visiting Thinland for the cuisine, like spiced fruits and grilled vegetables, and eventually become commuters, living where they're not pressured to gain weight, but working where they can get dates and good food. In Pear Bottom, another kind of feedee has emerged, the athletic feedee, who doesn't fit into the usual stereotypes. Women with jobs that are unusual for a feedee, jobs that require travel or maintaining your appearance. A third development is fat men who want to have thin wives are saying, "What about us?" Finland, which used to be just a reservation within Boob Valley, has taken over that district. The walls of the reservation came down at the demand of a small number of people from the other districts. A blending of societies resulted where commuters wanted to live in both worlds. For example, women wanting to be in the cotillion world of Finland and its underground medical publications, sneaking over the border to be with a boyfriend who likes them the way they really are, and then sneaking back again. The people of Finland began spreading their publications to the rest of the kingdom again. There was a scandal when a doctor finds out his daughter is friends with a guy who is struggling with immobility, and she wants to bring him back with her for special non-genetic medical treatment as a part of the family. But her father doesn't want to treat people with that lifestyle. People started pointing fingers until they realized they all have relatives on the other side, and it's impossible to separate them anymore. They took a long look at themselves and decided to make peace, going back to a single homogeneous culture. The one thing that stood in the way was the continued resurgence of intolerance. Renegade individuals who continued to sow discord even with their own relatives. I was about to say they were banned from the kingdom. Not that that's right or wrong, it's just what I think a society would do. But I'll leave the ending up to you. If a society has already declared bigotry as unwanted and come back full circle to where it was before, should bigotry be banished again? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Thanks for listening.